Welcome. I'm Archie Wright, the Executive Director of CBA. Welcome to the AGM. I have the pleasure today of speaking with Michael Peppard from Fordham University. And today we're going to talk to Michael about his book, How Catholics Encounter the Bible, published by Oxford University Press in 2024. So welcome, Michael. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much.
So we're going to talk to Michael about his new book, and we have 3 questions for him that it's going to kind of cover briefly what the book's about and how it relates to the history of scholarship in a specific field, and how the book's going to be helpful to faith communities and also how it might help in the classroom. So, Michael, if you just, first of all, just give us a summary of the central focus of what the book's about.
Sure. So I'd like to tell you the origin story of the book because it helps to explain how the structure came together. I was asked to write this book by an editor who wanted a book about how Catholics read the Bible. And for a while I resisted because I kept saying, well, the Catholics I know, despite Vatican II, despite all the efforts, they still don't really read the Bible.
Right.
And so do I want to devote several years of my life as a scholar to try to write about something that may not even be happening much?
Right.
And the editor said, to his credit, said, okay, well, tell me more what you mean. And I said, well, I think that's maybe a Protestant framing, and Catholics are doing a lot with the Bible, but the individual act of private reading, despite the CBA's efforts, is not happening as much as we would like. So the editor said, well, okay, why don't you pitch me that book instead? And that's what I did, and we settled on the verb encounter. So how Catholics encounter the Bible, which is a more capacious term that involves a number of modes of engagement. And so that's the original origin story there. But then I really started thinking about my parents too, a very Protestant mom and a very Catholic dad, and their different biblical cultures. And I started kind of doing my research in that way and thinking about what is distinctively Catholic as a mode of engagement with scriptural narratives, and how do scriptural narratives infuse sacramental life and prayer life, pilgrimage, the visual arts, and it just started going and going and going from there. There was a third key piece to the origin of the book, which is a quote from John Dominic Crossan, a name which is very familiar in this crowd. And Dom Crossan wrote a memoir called A Long Way from Tipperary. Have you read it by chance? You should read it.
A little bit, but not the whole, yeah.
Well, there was a moment in that really influenced me when I was developing the ideas for this book. And he entered the seminary, as a very young lad in Ireland, pre-Vatican II. And he said, when I first heard the words epistle and gospel, they were not parts of a book. They were sides of an altar. And that line just galvanized my thinking, that there is a whole history of Catholic engagement with Scripture that has only been mediated through liturgy, through prayer, through ritual, and through the arts. And what would it look like to give that a scholarly elevation by a Bible scholar, by someone who's trained in texts primarily, but what can we see differently when we look at it that way? And so then the structure of the book, in short, is that I start with what I consider the most frequent encounters that Catholics have with the Bible, which is by far Sunday Mass. So if you like the lectionary, this book is for you, because chapters 1 and 2 really get into what is the lectionary, its structure, its hermeneutics, what are its faults, its omissions, criticisms. And then it moves into prayers and devotions. About a third of the book is about visual arts, and I do a lot with medieval Christianity, but also back to late antiquity. And then the book concludes with some drama and literature, and then finally at the end, what we do. So
back to us.
Yeah, what when Catholics do actually sit down with the printed thing and look at it, what happens? What is Catholic Bible study? What are base communities like in Latin America? What do popes and professors say about how we should read the Bible? And so that's where it ends. So it's an important piece at the end, but it's not as frequently engaged as the things that come earlier.
Yeah. Great, Michael. That sounds like a really personal encounter with the Bible that you've written here for us. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
So our second question, how does the book reflect on the history of scholarship in its related field?
Well, each chapter is different there.
Yeah.
And so, the chapters that are about liturgy have one history of scholarship, right, of liturgical scholarship and lectionary reform and the ecumenical movement and these sorts of things. Other chapters about visual arts, have to learn an entire, I had to kind of do my best to become an expert in different areas. So, a section on the Virgin Mary in Our Lady of Guadalupe's image and how that relates to the woman clothed with the sun in Revelation 12, that opens up for me. It's kind of like you click on that window and there's a whole other history of scholarship, right, of people who have studied Guadalupan spirituality and the history of 16th century Mexico and biblical interpretation, and Miguel Sanchez and all of that. So I don't know that I have a concise answer to your question of how does this affect scholarship, because each chapter is really a different group, and then there's a section on Dante and there's a section on Gregorian chant and things like that. So if I'm going to give a summary answer, I would say that my hope for the book is that it models a style of integrative scholarship where someone can feel, although it's scary, you feel like a dabbler, you feel like you're not deep in any one thing, it's scary, but I hope that my book shows the value of having an integrative, like bigger picture, descriptive work that can stand on our bookshelves alongside more like micro-analytical exegetical studies.
Yeah. Sounded like you really had to broaden your field of exploration.
I did, and another point on that, I would say that a lot of our scholarship is related to our conditions of employment, like where we work, who we work with, the voices that are in our hallways and around us, and having been involved with the Catholic Studies program at Fordham is absolutely a big part of the origin of this book, or part of the energy for this book, because when I was lost, I knew I wanted Dante in the book, but when I'm lost with Dante, I can go to talk to a Dante scholar, across campus. And
that's great. So our third question, probably a little more practical. So how would this book help faith community, or academics in the classroom? How's this book going to help them?
Sure. Well, I think it depends on the classroom. I've had, for example, students who teach at Protestant, or professors, colleagues who teach at Protestant seminaries, who said they're excited to assign this for their Protestant seminarians to show a different mode of engagement with scriptural transmission. I've also talked to Catholic professors in Catholic seminaries who were eager to show a book that was neither cynical about the Catholic tradition, but nor overly pious about the tradition, and kind of say, here's what it's doing well with Scripture, but here's where it's falling short. But I hope that no matter who reads it, they'll kind of bounce around, ad lib, and find the spots that kind of animate for them, right? And if the lectionary is your thing, you go deep into that. If the visual arts are your thing, you can go deep into that and draw from it.
Well, there you have it. I think there's something in this book for everyone, no matter what your area of interest, whether it's liturgy or art or deep scholarship. It's there. So we want to thank Michael for being here with us today. Thank you so much, and we look forward to reading your book.
Thank you
so much.
Thanks.